Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another conversation here at Seekers Circle. If you don't know the community or if you're new, Seekers Circle is a community for conscious growth and co elevation, for emotional clarity and meaningful connection. And this channel is an extension of our community where we try to bring forth deep, interesting conversations. And we're big about going deep and really seeing all the different topics from different points of views. So today we're going to be talking about intimate relationships as portals for growth. It is the month of February. Everyone's talking about love, and we figured it would be very interesting to go a little bit deeper as to what are intimate relationships and how can they help us and support us for us to grow in a more conscious way. So, we're speaking with Dominic, my dear friend. He is a personal consultant and a mastery coach. Dominic studied in Stanford and got an MBA from Wharton, where he went on and lived in the corporate world and also worked in the federal world. And after several years, he retired into coaching. And he calls himself a relationship catalyst. I love having long, deep, interesting conversations with Dominic. He is filled with wisdom and a lot of practice. So hopefully you'll enjoy this conversation as to how we can go into conscious relationship and help our intimate relationships become portals for growth. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you on the other side. Hello, everyone. Hi, Dominic. How are you?
I'm great, Daniela. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm super happy and super excited to have you here today because no one knows this, but this whole thing started with us having a really good conversation and you giving me this idea. So, you and I have been friends for many years now, and we always meet in some great park in Miami and we have this super long conversations. And one day you said, like, let's record these. And finally, I got the ability, the tech, and the capacity to record these. So I'm excited that we're actually going to be recording one of our conversations. And today, what I thought would be interesting to talk about was love, like intimate relationships as portals for growth. So you and I have talked a lot about this, and we talk from all different angles, and I think you and I pretty much agree, that there's this romantic idea of relationships that give you stability, validation, and all these beautiful rosy feelings. But then, if the going gets tough, then you just want to run and hide. And actually, you and I always talk that these moments are portals for growth and actually deeper connection for the couple. So if you want to go into it a little bit, and then we'll see how we talk about this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think nearly everything here is for growth. I mean, here, Earth, existence. Um, I didn't used to think relationships were that. I thought relationships, you go to have fun. You go to, love someone, receive love. But as I was in relationships and out of relationships, I learned that whatever I thought about it didn't seem universally applicable. Meaning, like, at some point, what I thought it wasn't that. And then I realized, well, if it wasn't that for this relationship, it's probably not going to be this for like other relationships or following relationships. So, I mean, I try to come up with models I think that are just consistent throughout. And so everything that I thought relationships were are things I saw portrayed in movies and definitely like songs. I felt they just got stripped away. And then I was left, well, what is a relationship like fundamentally? And I realized that, well, the only thing that a relationship guarantees is growth. That's it. And by that, I mean, it's going to force you to look at yourself. And if you're going to stay in a relationship over time, then it's going to require internal change. And that's what I mean by growth. It doesn't guarantee growth in the other person.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't guarantee like acceptance by you of the other person, but if it's going to be maintained, it definitely requires like growth internally. And so that's what I realized relationships were. And if anything, kind of became like the environment for that growth. It's like you can say like an oven is an environment to bake something, to cook it.
Mhm.
And I think it's a similar thing for relationships. I mean, it applies some type of pressure, shall we say. And I think that pressure largely shows up when we're triggered because we I'm going to switch back to we and I, but I'll say so. So when I feel, um, say, not validated in a certain way, or I'm not
Mhm.
receiving something I want to receive, or my partner's not doing what I think she should do, then I feel that when the heat is on, or the baking is on, or let's say, just call those the triggers. And I'm I'm very much of the mind things should always come back to what I call balance. And so to me, balance is the absence of the trigger. Or I could just say peace. At a state of balance, things are peaceful, meaning like they're working and it can be sustained for a very long time. Like when we're at peace, we're not trying to end peace. We're not trying to make it shorter. But when we're angry or upset or we're feeling guilt or shame, we want those things to end as soon as possible. So to me, that's the more we know ourselves, the more I know myself, the more I can get back to that state of peace more quickly. And I feel relationships I've been in have helped really train me and hone that skill. And the growth has come because I've had to shift things internally for that to happen.
I love to think about that, like romantic relationships. Like all relationships have these triggers and these challenges, but really romantic relationships are the mastery. Like how much do I love this person? How much does this person trigger me? How much do I have to know myself and know the other person? And when you're in that space, it's like the mastery of knowing yourself and really being able to hold yourself and regulate emotionally also. Because you said this about like they trigger me. Like what does that mean when someone in your relationship triggers you? Why do you think that happens?
I think fundamentally the trigger happens because I guess I see myself in some type of uh, way that feels attacked are diminished. So in my head, there's an image I have of myself. There's an ideal, and so
Mhm.
not only do I like walk around with that, that's what I want other people to see. And so, like for example, if I tell a joke and other people laugh, then what's happening is my idea of myself is consistent what's happening out in the world, and I feel good about myself. I can say I'm funny. Uh,
Yeah, you're
but
validated.
yeah, yeah. But if I tell a joke, because I believe I am funny and I can tell jokes and I can spread mirth and humor in the world, and let's say my partner doesn't laugh, or let's say she frowns, or let's say she gets upset, then what I've run into, my idea of myself is no longer consistent with outside world, in particular like my partner, and then that that I that identity I want to have of myself is very strong. It's very strong, and so when I don't get feedback from the outside world that people are essentially agreeing with my idea of myself, it doesn't feel good. It can feel painful. I can feel like I'm attacked. I can feel like, well, wait, maybe something's wrong with me. Like my identity, like this carefully crafted identity, maybe it should change. And so that's what I mean about by the trigger. And so
Mhm.
sure, it can be say when I tell a joke, it can be when I say, offer a suggestion. It can be say how I dress, and then like maybe that's not accepted. So essentially it's all those moments where I feel, oh wait, I'm you mentioned the word validation. I'm not getting the validation that I'm wanting or I'm seeking. and this is very unconscious. I don't feel like I walk around out there saying,
Yeah.
please validate me, please agree with who I think I am. But to your question, what's a trigger? I think very in a very relatable way for people to understand what I'm saying. It's when my sense of myself is not agreed upon by my partner, and she gives me some indication that she thinks differently than I do, and that can feel uncomfortable.
And then like how do you handle that when you work with a client and they come to you with an issue with a relationship and one of them is like they continuously get triggered, and then how do you turn that into the mastery, not of like what I'm getting out of the relationship, but who do I get to be with the within the relationship so that this doesn't happen? You and I talk about this all the time, like how and not only with your clients but in your relationships, like holding space for that person, being in your mastery, and also like knowing where they're coming from and what they're needing.
Yeah, yeah. With clients, it's very much just changing their focus, and by that I mean I put their focus or attention on where it's going to be most valuable for them to have this resolution. So I know that they want to get back to peace. That's the model I'm working with, and so they're coming to me at some point of distress, and I know their distress is coming from because nearly all my clients are saying, I want my partner to change.
Yeah.
And and that one, at this point is very easy for me to just say, okay, so for our conversation, we're just going to focus on you.
Yeah.
Um, and I also share with them everything that they want in their relationship is going to come through change, but it's going to come through change in themselves.
Yeah. Do
And
you
so,
think you can change your partner? Is that something that in your experience or with your clients that you even try?
at this point, I say no.
Yeah. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
never.
it's a lot of times, it's funny in conversations, people like to bring up the outlier. They like to bring up like the one instance out of 100 or 1,000 where something was successful and say, see, you can do this thing. And so I I believe it's more productive to go after like the general case. And the general case is no, you can't change your partner. And let's say you do it 1 out of 1,000. It's not a repeatable thing. It's not sustainable. And so what is sustainable is keep focused on yourself
Yeah.
and you're changing. It's funny. It's almost like a strategy game, or we can just say a game. I mean, we're playing something, and there is like a wonderful outcome. Or there's getting successfully to the next level, getting to the next level, getting to the next level, and so basically, the we're going to stay on the same level until we get better, until we build our skills, and
Yeah.
so I mean this what we're talking about right now is I think is an advanced skill to just say we're going to focus on ourselves. We're going to use relationship as this container for growth and expansion, evolution. I think most people they never get to that place in their entire lifetime. So like they,
I know.
yeah, yeah.
I know, but I do wanted us to have this conversation because I do want people and our community to know that that is possible. And I think that is the most beautiful way, actually, to enter into a relationship if both partners have that level of consciousness and they
Mm-hmm,
know, forget about all the romantic ideas that this is going to be perfect, that the chemistry is going to last forever, that you're supposed to give me everything and you're going to be perfect. If
mm-hmm,
both partners really walk in with that level of understanding that we want to get to know the deepest part of each other and we want to be in the most beautiful vulnerability together and we're going to work, and I see it when you say like you open up levels,
mm-hmm,
if you fight well and you understand that, it's like you get to deeper levels of intimacy and or of deeper connection also, and I feel that it's infinite. You can go so deep with one person if
Hmm.
you go with that mentality.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and it's great if the other person is doing the same. So, um, in the strictest sense, I can say, well, yes, if you want your relationship to change, it says like, then you have to focus on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's so much better, as you say, if both of you have this agreement, this understanding. We are both approaching relationship the same way as this container for growth and expansion, and like we're both going to get triggered, and that those
Yeah.
triggers are essentially our coursework. It's our curriculum,
Uh-huh. Ah,
and
beautiful.
then that's what we get to work on. And in fact, it's a very I would say on the spiritual side, it's a very sacred thing to have someone that's in partnership with you to go on this path of growth, because there's some things that you're never going to discover about yourself, and thus never have a chance to work on outside of a relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, actually, a lot of things that we haven't healed from will only show up in relationship. If you're alone, you have no one to mirror back to you or to, exchange experiences with so that you can heal and grow. So, you know, beyond the possibility or the need to be in partnership, it is the biggest space for the most important space for mastery.
Hmm.
100%. And
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if you don't take it to the spiritual level, which is where you and I always take everything
Yeah. There we
because
go.
that's like our passion. But even like when I think about people that are super stoic and they're very resolute and they want to like have everything like very clear, just the the challenge of, you're stoic, okay, learn how to, master your emotions, learn what
Hmm.
needs to be done in order to be present in this relationship. What work do you need to do in order for the relationship to work? And I, as you said, I think it's beautiful, it's fun, and it can be like a good challenge. Like, I'm going to do this well. I'm going to show up in the relationship, in the best possible way. And why am I getting triggered? And also looking at what are all the good things that the relationship brings forth and how can you nurture that, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just has so many aspects, and at times we talk about, say, like, masculine and feminine energies, and I enjoy how you just talked about, like, if you might be really stoic, so that might be a trait frequently discussed, like men are stoic, and
Mm-hmm.
women can frequently say, well, you're too stoic, or like you're too robotic, or you're not emotional.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you'll hear women commonly described as, well, you're too emotional, like you're too all over the place. And that's what I mean about having that balance thing. I mean, you want both characteristics. You want the stoicism, you want the emotionality, but you want them blended together in a way that is like harmonious. And not only is it something internally where you reach a good yin and yang balance, but it's also with your partner, because even though there's the masculine and feminine energy in both parties, um, in let's say in just a typical heterosexual relationship, the man's going to go more dominantly toward the masculine pole, and the woman's going to go more dominantly towards the feminine pole. And um, at the same time, neither can be too strongly adamant about, say, being at a particular place in the pole. They have to flow and go back and forth. And sometimes, the woman can be in the more masculine, and the man can be more in the feminine. And it's just always a matter of kind of, say, surfing, the wave, surfing the different things that come up in the relationship. And also, having this understanding, this is my partner, my teammate, my my co-collaborator. They are not the problem. If anything, they're the solution. They're the catalyst that is causing me to move forward.
Going back to Stoicism, the obstacle is the way. So
Hmm.
actually your partner is presenting to you what you need to work on so that you can get to the other side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a,
And
it's a, it's a, it can be a very deep game. Sometimes, my clients ask me, "Oh, well, when do I know when I should throw in the towel?" And I'd say, "Well, I mean, it always depends how deep you want to go. I mean, maybe you feel like you're done with this lesson, or maybe you want to like leave this lesson behind. But I also say it's as long as there's this lack of peace, there's always like a deeper resolution that you can reach.
yeah, I was gonna ask you that. Like, what's the discernment? Like, what is the that tipping point between I'm in a healthy, challenging, beautiful, growing relationship, and then I'm misaligned with this person, and we should just go on each other's way? Like, how do you discern that, or how do you work with your clients on that?
There's that term I think you hear in divorces a lot. Irreconcilable differences. It,
Yeah.
it, it seems like a cliche. We always see that reported in newspapers, or it's in the movies. Um, but I do think that's applicable to this question, because we've made some assumptions. Both of you are working together in this model. So, like, what can happen frequently? There's wake up calls that happen in life. And I think in relationships, those typically cause like the biggest wake up calls they're the source most frequently of wake up calls. This
Yeah.
awakening process, because what you thought you had or what you thought was applicable isn't so. I mean, that's essentially the awakening in the nutshell. And so that's probably not going to happen at the same time in a relationship. And so let's say one partner has that. And so this happens a lot. I'll get female clients, and it's almost like the phrase, like I know what they're going to say after I hear the first two words. It's like, I'm working on myself, but he's doing nothing. So that can run into one of those what I call irreconcilable differences, because if you're doing all this work on yourself and then like your partner just refuses to, what happens is that, let's say this awakening and the growth, it's an ascension process. You're going up, but if you're growing up, then at some point you're not really in that same energetic space anymore. So what happened initially while you're together is because you were more or less at the same place. There was a
Mhm.
resonance in your two energies. Um, but if one is growing and then the other is not, then that resonance kind of falls like away, and then other things fall away. The attraction in another partner falls away, like the interest. Sometimes things show up as like the respect, the admiration, fall away. So that can be one of those scenarios. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion, but it's the same thing as, let's say you're in like university and you're on some like group project. I mean, it's pretty clear there. If one person's doing the work, another person isn't, it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
It's just not a good time unless the two agree, say, listen, I'm just going to carry us for right now or for this length of time, because sometimes like you can do that. But in a relationship, if that's a dynamic going on, then sure, that might be the cases where you part ways. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of times, I would say, um, because I say it comes up with my clients, it's like, well, I'm doing the work and he isn't. Sometimes we give ourselves too much credit for, for
How
for
is
for the for the outcomes of the work that we're doing, because there's a statement I love. It's like, we don't do meditation to get better at meditation. We do meditation to get better at life. And so all this spiritual growth that we're doing, it should be producing better outcomes. And so it's, it's unfortunate. We want to say effort counts, and that's true. But what really counts are outcomes of the effort, of all the spiritual work that we're doing. And what really needs to be these outcomes is that you become more accepting, become a lot more accepting of yourself, and you become a lot more accepting of your partner. And so I've seen cases where I've pointed out to my clients, I'd say, like, I want to acknowledge all your work, but you're still angry, bitter, resentful, quick to anger, belligerent, unpleasant, those type things. I said, like, your work isn't producing results. And so then if we go through that, very frequently, not all the time, very frequently, what they saw as so many huge drawbacks in their partner disappear. And they say, you know what, he's not doing his spiritual work, but he's actually providing what I'm very much interested in, which is grounding, stability, reliability, consistency, being his word, those type of things. And then it's not necessarily what I would call they're both on this path of awakening, but I find that, if a partner realizes that they're getting what they want in the relationship, it actually becomes a very good platform where they feel a lot freer to continue on their work, without feeling like, oh, their partner is keeping them from things, or somehow it's is messing up their life.
Yeah, I agree with that, and actually have several friends that are in a very deep spiritual path. And I've noticed that when you get to a certain point, it's like, I don't even care if he's not doing the work, because it's not about him anymore. It's just the work that I'm doing and how I'm showing up to the relationship. And I think also just someone that gives you stability and containment, and it's true to their word, that is huge also.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's just what you need at that moment in time, and you don't need the other person to be in this path of conscious relationship and growth, which, what you said, both partners need to be very skillful at managing their emotions and understanding their triggers and where they're coming from, and all of those things that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth talking a little bit of, like, if you're alone right now and you're not in partnership, what could you be doing so that you are better prepared for when you are in partnership? And you just don't arrive there with like all these expectations and all these crazy ideas that, yeah, I'm going to be able to change that person and everything's going to be butterflies and rainbows.
Yeah. I think you can approach a few different ways. I think it's always good to look at proxies, or like similarities between things, to see, like, what,
Uh-huh.
if I can understand this model, are there any carries over to help me really understand this other model? And I think when it comes to relationship, one method is to just look at the workplace, say, like in employment. Um, Being in a relationship, really, it's filling a job position. It's a role with responsibilities. And
Hmm.
so if you think about a job, like if you're going to apply for it, then they have a need, they want to hire someone, and they want to hire someone who uh, they don't have to give any supervision to, minimal supervision, and they come in and they can perform at a certain level with a certain level of skill sets. That's done. And they're open for feedback, because, right, we're going to have like quarterly or biannual like reviews, and say, okay, this is what's going well, this is what's not, this is what we need to do going forward and stuff. Um, that's a lot of what's going on in a relationship. It's just not stated. That's the thing. Like, we're not
Yeah.
really saying those things out there. And it's funny. You can see, I think, in the public sphere, there's a lot of these proxies going on, where you can see that type of thinking there, even though people are stating it. Like, for example, I think it's very common now for women to say, "Oh, he gave me the ick." And basically what women are saying is, I have an idea of how he should be, and he's not doing that, and so it didn't make me feel good. Um, so in I think, just think about, okay, what role am I willing to fulfill, and like what are the responsibilities, like what am I providing? And I
Wow.
think that's a good way to provide it, because if you're looking for a job, you at some point you get to ask yourself, well, am I a good fit for this job? Am I good? Would I be considered a good employee? Can I excel in this role? Or if I wanted to excel in this role, how would I do it? Like, what skill sets, like, would I need? So I think that's one way to approach it, because um, I think, I mean, we can talk about relationships, what they may be much further down the road, but I think it's very relevant to just let people know, yes, your partner will have expectations.
Of course.
Yeah, it's going to be there, and
Yeah.
so it's
You
good
don't
to
get to
know.
do whatever you want and hope they don't expect anything. I mean, it's a reciprocal relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's one way to look at it, and so here's uh, another way to prepare yourself to be in relationship. And so there's this question always of, um, if you had an opportunity to date you, would you? And so you get to ask yourself that, and then it says, like, would I love to date myself, or would I reluctantly want to date myself, or would I really just want to date someone else, or would I not want to? And so you can kind of get a feel for yourself in the body, because if it isn't like, I would love to, well, then there's like work to do. And I think from that perspective, people can always look at and says, okay, well, where am I at right now? So, like, point A, and where do I think would be a good place for me to be? That's point B. And so all that distance between A and B, that's the gap that the person can work on, like, right away. They don't need to wait in a relationship to work on those things. And I think that said simply another way, if you already know that there's ways that you can be better, then just be better. Work on being better. And so if you know you're difficult in conversation, figure out how to be less difficult. If you know you have a tendency to be mopey or pessimistic, then figure out how to be less mopey and less pessimistic. Because too many people feel like, well, once I'm in relationship, I'm going to be these different things. And the thing is, like, no, you're not. You're going to be the exact same person in a relationship that you are right now. And so do everything you can to become better now. And it's I think, in a nutshell, it boils down to this: like, figure out how to become happy and peaceful now. That's how you have a good relationship. Because if you're not able to get yourself to those places, then what you're doing is you're bringing a person who's not happy and not peaceful, or not able to return to that place easily, to the relationship. And people don't want to deal with those energies for a long period of time.
Or maybe you're expecting your partner to give you all of that. And it's a lot of expectations, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not fair. Yeah. You
yeah.
just reminded me of, you and I did a course together that said, how you do one thing, you do everything. Like, how you
Mm-hmm.
remember, like, how you show up in one space, it's how you show up in everything else. So I
Yeah.
love that you said that, because yeah, the question of, like, would you date yourself right now? And, how are you showing up in all your other relationship? It's going to be a really good indicator of how you're going to show up with your next romantic relationship, and what are you going to bring to the relationship, as a partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And talking about that, what do you think are like the must-haves, like what we all should be thinking about to bring into the relationship as a partner?
Well, it's a similar answer. Let's say, because there's always, I think, the as a man and as a woman, but I think this ties together pretty quickly. I'd say, well, let me clarify something too. When you say that the must-haves, it's like the must-haves for ourselves or the must-have in the other person.
Well, for me, it would be for the relationship.
The
Like I'm,
must-haves for the relationship.
yeah, like I'm thinking a lot, not just in terms of two individuals, but more in terms of the bubble of the relationship itself. And I think that that paradigm shift, of not we're like not two autonomous people having parallel lives that meet up, but no, we create something that's even bigger than ourselves. And that relationship is what we nurture, which is in a lot of the literature. It's not like I'm saying this. It's in a lot of the literature today, like how you owe your, if both partners decide that their priority is going to be the relationship, well, what would you bring into that space?
I would say shared commitment. I mean, what are you both
Yeah.
committed to do? I just think it gives like life and vitality to a relationship, and I also think it brings longevity because it's essentially acknowledging like there's purpose to the relationship, and so that shared commitment, that's that purpose. Like, we are together to do this thing or these things, um, and I think that needs to be arrived at like very consciously with each other. And like, purpose could be we're gonna work on ourselves and we're gonna become better people. But let's say that's been going on for a while, and like you've done a significant amount of work. It might be, well, we're going to create some type of business together, or we're going to create, say, like a healing center together, or we're going to travel together and see these things. We're going to have these experiences together. It's really much one of the cases where 1 plus 1 should equal way more than 2. So I think that shared commitment is really important.
And
Let's see.
having, I love that, and having clarity as to both of you wanting the same thing. Because if one of you wants to travel all over the world and the other one wants to have a baby, then there's a misalignment there that, you know, could could not help. So I love that, that shared purpose of the relationship and having
Mhm.
clarity.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing is like, how do we deal with challenges? Because the
Okay.
challenges are gonna come up. I think that's like real important to prepare for that. Um,
And do you work with your clients on agreements, like actually sitting down with their partners and writing down agreements for different aspects of their lives?
Not typically.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do. It depends where I engage with the couples. Um, I think of the couple as I work with, the majority, they do have agreements that they're able to express and like talk about. And just as you and I can always go into the spiritual side of things,
Yeah.
I, I'm 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 looking more for them to feel that space than for me to kind of like push them into it,
Yeah.
um, because it's I think there's so much depth that's possible in relationships, and at the same time, many of the people I'm working with, I mean, they have these other things going on in their life. Of course, they've got jobs that they've
Mm.
got to tend to. They've got parents of various like health and age that they need to work with. Like children that they're working with. Many are entrepreneurs, or they're very like senior in their position. So it's they're not trying to say become Buddha or like achieve Christ consciousness in a relationship. So a lot of what I'm doing, it's just a bit of my work. It's trying to um, really lock in on having the harmony and the peace in themselves, but also in the relationships. And so I think it's helping them identify what they've already agreed to, and clarifying, is that what they still want to have with each other? Are there new things that they want to have? And then I'm very much just asking them at this point, not filling in the blank, so they at least get clarity on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's super important also, that when you enter the relationship, maybe you do have some agreements that you verbalized and you agreed upon, like specifically, but then as the relationship evolves, the agreements also evolve and change, and you need to check up on each other to see if those things are still, valid,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the thing I'd add to the agreements, it's similar, but it's a bit different. It's getting back to what I said, like the job and the roles and the responsibilities. It's from everything I see, yes, a woman expects her man to do X, Y, and Z, and a man expects his woman to do like A, B, and C. I like for my clients to get explicit about that, because it's really worth like the conversation, um, to at least really get into what the other person is thinking. Because a lot of times people, what they want is just what they grew up with, which could be great. And sometimes, well, no, it's not. Like we want different things, or it would be better to come up with these and then share with other person and see if they're going to fulfill that. I think particularly now, because people have so many options, in terms of working, the amount of work, income levels, where they live, uh, you know, uh, children, no children, um, whether if there's children, people staying at home or not, child rearing, who's getting up in the evening. And so it's good to surface those things, because they will come up.
Yeah, life used to be so much simpler in other times, where you like grew up in your town, married the people from the town, and stayed there in that community. Like everyone shared the same culture, the same values, and life was pretty much, very limited. Now is what you're saying. I mean, you can choose to work remote or stay here, have kids, freeze your eggs, have them later. There's so many other choices that I guess the you need to express them really to be able to be sure that you're aligned, because it can get very complicated.
Hmm.
Personally, I'm glad like I'm not in that space anymore. I look at young people nowadays and I'm like, wow, it's so complex, everything,
Yeah.
from what it used to be.
And
Um,
it's so complex. I've been fascinated by how many times I've heard people are just opting out, where like men are saying like I'm done, I'm out, I'm not dating anyone, I've given up on dating. And I could get it if these guys are saying they're like 40s, or like 50s or beyond and stuff, but you have guys in their 20s saying
yeah.
this. I'm just going to focus on me and my career. uh, but what's really interesting, you have women saying the same thing. It says like, women, they're saying things that you just hear out of a guy's mouth, like, no, I want to preserve my peace. um, I don't want to give up my freedom. Um, yeah. And I think in the evolution of things, people are saying it kind of this phrase, I just don't feel it's worth it. So, you're saying all these changes are happening. And I think the assessment of many people is just like, I think what I would get from it, it doesn't have enough value for me anymore. So I'm just not going to participate. And that can be based on all sorts of things. It's funny, like multiple people can see the same set of circumstances, but each of those people can draw their own set of conclusions about it.
it just breaks my heart to think that a 20-some-year-old man is going to say, I'm opting out. Like, what could have happened in his world that he's only 20 and he's opting out? It's like there's so much life and so much growth and so much love and joy and excitement on the other side of that. And for someone to not want to, explore it, it breaks my heart. Really, I don't know what else to say, but but that,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like,
yeah. No, it's interesting. I must say it doesn't break my heart to hear it.
well,
Um, but I understand where that comes. So for me, so many things are just I'm just witnessing. I'm just observing a lot, and so um, I think if someone is in that state, like I know I definitely there's an inclination for me to want to engage them in conversation and just ask questions. Well, why do you think that, or like
yeah,
what's brought you to that conclusion? Because typically what I hear is it's things like, well, I saw my parents go through this. I don't want to experience that. Or like I've had in my dating these have been my outcomes, so thus I think like I'm not a person for relationships. um and it's I think ultimately if someone decides not to be like in a relationship, what they're going to lose out on is the potential for a lot of learning and growth and
yeah.
expansion.
And
And
connection and love and delicious, because I mean, being in partnership, you and I have spoken a lot about having it be a portal for growth, but all of that comes with all the juiciness of a relationship. You do get the butterflies at the beginning. You do feel connected and you do feel held and you do feel safe. So, what happens with all this younger generation that they don't want to have that? What happens? What's the alternative? Do they get into like casual relationships, or just like how does that, how do you live that? Like, I'm opting out of relationships.
well, I mean, you see a variety of different things. I think there's definitely a rise in casual relationships. You
Hmm.
hear this word called situationships.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's huge.
yeah, I think there's a lot of shorter term relationships that happen, um, and if we just observe it, and part of the thing of observing, are we actually seeing what we think we're seeing? I mean, I think the longer you're in any activity and you're putting effort into it, you're you're developing your muscles in that way,
Hmm.
like grit, resolve, determination, problem solving,
Yeah,
those type of things. And so
resilience,
yeah,
creativity. There's so much that gets into it.
yeah, you're making yourself a much more, I'd say, resilient person, but also a much more capable person. You
Hmm.
can even say, the term like well-rounded. And so,
Yeah.
um, if you're getting into casual relationships and situationships, it's and then I hear something else that goes on uncommonly. It's that you know men are generally much more interested in like a wider range of women than the opposite. So women, they're interested in a much smaller range of guys. And
Hmm.
so what you see out there, like, dating trends right now, is that small percentage of guys, let's say 5 or 10%, that nearly all women want, they're getting a lot of dates. Those men are getting a lot of dates, but those men are not committing. They're getting into the situationships. They're getting into the casual
Yeah.
relationships. And thus the women are forced to as well, because there's a huge difference between, and I'd say particularly for a woman, there's a huge difference between a man that you can have sex with as opposed to a man who agrees to be in a relationship with you. You know, it's a vast difference. And so I think if people are opting not to get into these longer term relationships, or relationships at all, then they're just not experiencing the deeper richness that could be there. It's like always like sampling, but like never investing in, say, getting like the compound returns of something.
That's what breaks my heart, because I do think that being in partnership has that depth and richness. I do think that like one person is like a whole universe to discover. And when both of you like turn towards each other and say, okay, let's discover each other, let's do this work together, there's such like intimacy and complicity, is that the word, when you're I don't know, I can't think about it, but there is a richness to the relationship that gets lost in this like constant like superficial relationships or hookups, or you know. And it's a shame, because, and I try personally, I always try to tell like my kids and everyone that wants to listen that are younger, and actually have a presentation about this, about conscious dating, like not going into just one hookup after the other one, but just really understanding how much richness and how much beauty is there for you to discover. Like everything you need to know, you can work on within the framework of a relationship.
So I have a question for you. I mean, it's kind of like I guess I would say like maybe it's more like a request. Like I want you to sell being like in a relationship, because so I know some things about you, right? You've
Yeah.
taken tantra courses, you've been in different containers, you've learned from like world class teachers. This is your work talking about like relationships, and so uh let's say if the general person in the public just says like, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze.
Oh,
Relationships are not for me. They seem complicated. Well, the only thing I've experienced is like it's good for a certain amount of time, and then it's like a whole bunch of like not good stuff, and the person just complains all the time and stuff. Um, it's what what's possible? It's like if you were to sell it, or say like talk about that deeper depth, what would you what do you want to share with people that you say is available?
well, first of all, it's not out of theory. It's like I've been able to experience that, so I know it's available for us. And I've studied, you said, with a lot of teachers, and I've been in groups where a lot of women and men that I know have been able to access that. Some of them have been able to stay there for, many years, and others not long enough. But I do think it's available for all of us, and I do think it's a much deeper way of living your own life, not like being in a relationship, just like how you engage with life when you are in a conscious partnership. It just adds a whole different dimension to your life, where you have someone next to you that you get to share your whole life with them. You get to, when it's a conscious relationship, where you feel that you're contained, that they can hold you, that you can hold them. And when you talk about intimacy, the levels of pleasure and intimacy that you can reach, you cannot reach that in, more casual, more superficial relationships.
You can't do that just with a vibrator.
Oh, no. No way. No way.
Or fleshlight, I suppose.
No, 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 no. You need to have that person hold you, and having those conversations, just eye gazing and just being close to that person is just a different experience of life. And
Yeah.
when you and I talk about this all the time, like when a 20-year-old says, I'm checking out of this, it's like, you have no idea what you're missing out on. Like, just put in a little bit of effort. And yeah, what you said, like the juice is not worth the squeeze. Yeah, I mean, it is worth it when you get there. But you need to have the discernment to be able to choose someone that's willing to go through that path with you. And that path, we have like historical characters like Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and where you see that archetype of that conscious relationship at that dance of female and male energy, and what can happen there. And I think that it is a totally different life, 100%. And I can tell you from my early relationships to the latest ones that they grow and they get deeper and more profound and much richer. And that's the quest. Like, how can I just have that rich relationship? And that is like what I want to give to like that understanding to the world. Like, yes, that is available for you. You can get there. You do need to put in the work, but if both of you are, it can be fun, most of the time. And also I think, and maybe you can tell me, but when you are in a conscious relationship, it's not like the whole time it's work. It's not like you're always fighting. It's like when there's a trigger and when, we lose ourselves in that trigger, then we get to repair. But it doesn't mean that you always have to be fighting at all. You can be at peace and in love and joy and connection. And yeah, something will come up because we're all humans. We're here in this plane learning. And when that happens, okay, we're both aware. Let's just figure what happened and let's repair. And in my experience, that repair just brings the relationship to another level. Like, wow, it was possible to go deeper, and it was possible to be more vulnerable, and it is possible to love that person even more. And I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot. Like, when I used to be in Venezuela, there was always like this basement that I could open a door and I could go deeper to more negative things. And I would say like, no, this cannot get worse. It's impossible that things can get worse. And no, you go down and they would open, a door, and you could keep going down and things could get worse and worse and worse. Well, I've also lived spaces where I say it's impossible that this can get any better. And then you open, a door here and it keeps getting better and better and better.
Mm.
And just as, there's infinite darkness, there's also infinite love and infinite connection. And from personal experience and from the teachings and the people that I've, worked with, that is available to all of us. So yeah, if we get to do the work, we also get to have that infinite love available for us.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm too romantic, but that's what I would like to believe.
I think you've done it. You sold it. You say like, infinite goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everything you say, it's super appealing, and I realize why you're saying it. It's inescapably always come back to this phrase, like you have to do the work to get there.
Yeah.
And men run into this like a lot, where if a guy is saying like, I don't have the job I want, I don't have the friends I want, I don't have the money I want, in his friend group, his buddies are going to essentially tell him, do better.
Stop being a victim, stop being a victim also. Like, why don't you have the job that you want, or the house that you want, or, that also is important.
Yeah. I mean, I think a good group of guy friends, they put it back on the guy, and they said, well, you just need to do better. Like it's you, like there's not someone who's going to come save you. You have to resolve this. And there's more help than that, but that's kind of the fundamental thing. And I think what people fail to realize in relationships, like if you think it, most of the people, they're focused on, say, career and in moving along in some way of that, are just they're focused in at least bringing enough money, like to pay the bills and stuff. And so they've made themselves at least valuable enough to bring in a certain level of income and stuff. So, and that takes a lot of focus. When you think about, you back in grade school, you're going to all that schooling in high school and college, maybe advanced degrees, to really just be that person who can produce enough value for someone else where you can get some amount of money. It's comparable in relationships, except no one's getting that training. And so if you want that great relationship, and the things that you're talking about, as you were speaking, I was realizing, well, that means you have to really focus on becoming a great communicator. You have to really focus on becoming great at emotional intelligence. you
Mhm.
you you have to focus
Yeah.
on going through whatever all the things are, right? The therapy, that creates that, like, that growth within, right? That helps remove those triggers, and that might be, therapy, coaching, plant medicine, breath work, uh, you know, Reiki, energy work, all these different things. It goes on and on. So, like, that's the whole journey through there. And then also, when it comes to, like, lovemaking, like sex, like, you have to make yourself, like, I would say, like, a great lover. And I would assure anyone, if you haven't put in effort with that ideal in mind, specifically
Yeah.
to become a great lover, you are not a great lover. Just
Well,
like, period.
that's part
And
of that has been like part of my calling. Like, I was married for 25 years and I was super happily married. I was always felt really well in my marriage. I loved my husband. But I didn't know that something else was different. I didn't know that I had access to something different. And I think that's something that happens in our society. Like, we go to school, they teach you math and science and language and all these things, and no one tells you how to be in relationship. They
hmm
talk about the birds and the bees, but they don't tell you how to be a good lover. There's so many skills that are left out in formal education that it took me forever to realize, there is such a thing as a conscious relationship and that
hmm
that is available for us. And then when you finally realize that that is available for you and you start figuring out what does that mean and what you said, what do I have to do to get this to this place, like the Reiki, the therapy, all the retreats, so every single course out there, but you have that vision, it is available. And then like everything changes because you're going to start working from that different paradigm. And I think that has been part of what I've wanted to do, like tell people like this is available. And there's lots of writers that write about it, and there's a lot of literature supporting it. But if you know that that's available and you work towards the same thing, like, why wouldn't you study? You go to the gym to have a better body, you go to school to have a better mind and be more educated. Why wouldn't you study to be a better lover? I
hmm
mean, it makes no sense. Like, yeah, where are those courses? Where do I sign up so that I can be a better lover and I can enjoy more my relationship both ways, just because of how I show up and what I give and then what I get to receive. But no one in society tells you that.
Yeah, yeah, and again, you can go your whole life and miss all of that. And and and
Totally.
and, and I think, going back to, our larger theme of, relationships being this portal for growth. Um, we just take a step back. Why are we here? We are here for this awakening process. We're here for growth. Like, we're here for self realization.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. So even with that, relations themselves are like a background thing, but relationships also are the single most efficient tool for that self-realization to occur, um, by jumping into it and making sure that you're mastering all those, like, skill sets. Relationships essentially really help in that process of self mastery. You need the self mastery to get to the self realization. And so it's kind of like how the game is built.
And in the meantime, you get to access infinite amount of love and pleasure. So,
Yeah,
I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that?
I,
Like,
I
why
love how
would you check it out?
I love how you keep coming back to that, because that's also something I've noticed. It's like, well, you can tell me what the books say. You seem to be well read in this regard.
Yeah.
It has been my observation, maybe the authors, agree with me, that the capacity for a woman to feel pleasure is much greater than that of a man.
Yeah.
And so I think the primary driver that we see that women have in a relationship and they're seeking is more pleasure. I mean, that's one of the things, because I think what women have come to realize is just like, wow, I can have pleasure in relationship. You know, it's funny. Like, some of my clients I work with, like, when it comes to sex, like, one of their biggest realization is like, oh wow, I finally realized that sex is actually something that I can enjoy. I thought it was I thought it was just something I had to do, like a chore, like
No, no.
like a duty, you know?
No, you know that you and I should record another conversation just on that topic because we've
Yeah,
spoken about this for hours to no end. But yes, women are looking for safety and connection, and they just don't even know that pleasure is available for them. A lot of them don't even. And when they
yeah,
realize it, it's like, wow, I get to have, this amount of pleasure. And
yeah.
women are wired to have much more pleasure than men. I mean, you and I studied it. Women can have 7 types of orgasms according to Tantra. Men
Hmm.
can't. It's
Yeah,
much easier for a woman to be multi-orgasmic than for a man. But that's just like once you're in the mastery. I'm just talking about, being in the relationship and allowing it to be a space for conscious growth.
yeah. Well, but yeah, as you're talking, I'm just realizing, just how many levels we're talking about. It'll be, I think, a gift you could do to the world is, and maybe you already do this with your clients, it's like you would draw this out, all these levels we're talking about, and the growth and everything else, because, um, well, I think in the background, whether women are aware of this or not, there's, we need a certain amount of, like, energetic catalyst to cause this growth. And a lot of times in relationships, it's the dissatisfaction. And so frequently women will show up and they're saying, like, I'm not getting enough, whatever. And a lot of that, you can say it can come down to pleasure or feeling good, or, or feeling safe or secure or protected or provided for. And then you do those things, and then you get maybe more into the actual pleasures. Like, I'm not feeling attracted or attractive, or not feeling orgasmic or stuff. And then I'm not feeling multi-orgasmic. We get onto to other things and stuff. And so I think in that search, I think women have this innate knowing, but now I think it's, with media and people talking and whatever, they also have this larger knowing that there is this top level that's, like, possible,
Yeah.
and they want it. They want it, and they want to go for that. And I think with men traditionally, they've wanted to reach, say, these transcendent states, like in enlightenment. So it's not like necessarily that they're looking for more pleasure. They're just looking for, like, a greater connection to God, a deeper connection to God. Um, and so I think, it's interesting in that conversation what's coming up, this, like, there's, like, similar interests, but different.
Yeah.
Um, and the interesting side of things is that pursuing that pleasure actually can provide those both things for both parties. So, like, pleasure for both parties, but also for both parties that much, much greater, expanded consciousness
Mhm.
and much, much deeper connection to God.
And
Um,
and I'm super glad we ended up talking about intimacy and sex because really that's what separates, intimate relationships from all the other relationships you have. When you're
mhm.
in an intimate partnership, that whole aspect of sexuality just opens up a whole new dimension in your world that you cannot access with a coworker or, some a friend or a cousin, some other relationship in your life. This is intricate and it's like embedded into the characteristics of that type of relationships.
Yeah, I mean, one of the fundamental requirements, if you want to have, like, great sex, it's great pleasure, it's presence.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
presence. And to just be able to have a deep level of presence means a very good level of, like, self-mastery, which means, like, a lot of prior work that's been done with successful outcomes.
Yeah, 100%. And the connection and the vulnerability, there's so much that goes into it. Again, it's such a rich, deep experience that just letting people know that it's available for us, it's beautiful. And then for everyone to go get the information that resonates with them, and how can they get that work?
So I have another question for you. So do people have time for this? So let's say, people, they're out there in a relationship and they're like, okay, I got kids, I got my job, you know, um, I'm working full time, my spouse is working full time. Um, is there time to reach these levels of deep consciousness and deep pleasure, or like do we got to wait until like we're retired before we can do that?
Well, I talk to young adults about this, and I think that if you learn about all these concepts when you're young and you understand that that's a priority, it's not urgent, but it's super important. So if you put in an hour or 2 hours at the gym every day, you know, maybe you should be putting in a few hours a week to make yourself a better partner and a better lover. Like, it's a matter of prioritizing that in your life. Of course, there's going to be seasons in your life, maybe when you have babies or young kids, and then just, the agenda just swallows you up because you got to be thinking about diapers, you got to be thinking about homework and soccer practice and all this other stuff. But if it's a priority in your life and in your relationship, then you make the time for it. Like, for me, it's like, for me, that's more important than going to the gym. Like, if I had to pick, no, how do I work on my relationship?
Mm,
uh, More than anything else. But I don't think we realize that we need to put in the work and sort of study it like we've studied everything else in life, and make it a priority. It's never going to be urgent until you're, dying from heartbreak and you're like, what happened? You
mm.
know? And then the heartbreak is going to tell you, well, maybe you could have done things differently. And what are you going to do for your next relationship? As
Yeah.
you said, there's got to be like a pain point, but there shouldn't be. If you have this paradigm when you're young and this is accessible for you and it's available and it's a possibility, and you make it a priority in your life, wow, I think we would have a much happier society
Yeah.
as a whole.
Yeah. And I think it is a good priority to have. Um, you're going to have X number of these priorities, right? Income, career, family. Um, but I think the relationship, focus on that. It checks a lot of the boxes, particularly on the self development, the self growth,
Yeah.
and I would say even the spirituality side of things.
Even more. I mean, if you think about it, like, they always say, like, if you don't have health, you don't have anything else. So health, it's like baseline. You need to feel healthy. But then when you're like living your life and you're having an issue with your romantic partner, it destabilizes everything else in your life more than anything. Like, if you fight with your girlfriend, or it's like, you get obsessed, you cry, it's absolutely destabilizing. So why would you want to be in a situation where you can't handle that fight into a quick repair? I mean, you should have studied it. Of course, no one told you that that was a possibility, but now that you know, like, find out, how do I repair quickly after a fight? Because you can have, I think that top things, having health issues, having issues with a child, that your child is going through something that will like completely destabilize you, and then having issues with your romantic partner. Everything else is like, yeah, maybe, I can deal with. But those three things, you will not even be able to think. It's
Hmm.
it's it's critical in your life. So if they are so important, why wouldn't you want to learn
Yeah,
and master it while you're at it? I don't know.
yeah. I,
Well,
I I see the point, and then it also brings us back to the people deciding not to get into these things, at all.
I hope that if one person hears this and decide that it's worth their effort, that they find that, there is so much beauty on the other side of doing the work, and so much growth and expansion and pleasure and ecstasy. But it doesn't come for free. Well, I don't
I,
think so. It hasn't been my experience.
I think as you keep talking about the pleasure and ecstasy, like, more people will come on board for sure.
Well, I hope so. And it's 100% true. And it's not me just talking. There's like tons of teachers that have written tons of books about it. So it is out there and it is available for everyone. So we just got to get the information and,
Hmm.
work on it. Okay, so it's been more than an hour, but it's what I said at the beginning. You and I always have a hard time just saying goodbye and stopping the conversation, and that's why we walk for 2 and 3 hours at the park. But I think that you know we've really covered everything about relationships as portals for growth. I don't know if you want to like wrap it up with some final words. And then we have one on polarities, and I'll link it here because we did have a conversation on polarities that I think is very interesting for the relationship work. And yeah, we'll figure out what other topics we're going to be. I think we have them here. I don't remember, but we'll continue these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I were to wrap it up, I mean, I would just say, yeah, I mean, relationship is going to challenge you to grow more, and it's going to make you a much more capable, richer person than anything else. And I think even for people, let's say, who've been in a long-term relationship and it's ended, I think they would all say like, well, wow, the person I became during,
Wow.
if they approach it consciously, I'm very much glad I had that experience. I got to look at myself and evolve myself and let go of things I've been carrying, say, for like decades that were no longer serving me, that were hurting me in other parts of my life. And so, um, yeah, I just think, given the framework, we are here for this growth and expansion. You're not going to get that level of evolution anyplace else than in a conscious relationship.
I'm just going to add that yes, you will get the growth and the evolution, and you will get the love and the butterflies and the pleasure and the ecstasy because they do come
Beautiful.
hand in hand.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and you know me, I'm a romantic, so yeah. Thank you so much, Dominic. This was so much fun.
Mm,
Can't wait for our next conversation. Bye,
same, same.
everyone. Bye, everyone.
Bye.